How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
There's a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock. It's the podcast that explores the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
I'm co-host Justin Bishop.
And I'm your other co-host, writer-comedian, Mr. Todd A. Davis. Greetings and welcome to part 8 of our series covering the works of the Wachowskis in our series called The Cinema of Fluidity.
Our series finale.
That's right.
By the way, our series finale, part 8
we're
of
here.
8. Really, part 8 of 10.
That's true.
If you count the bonus episodes, because there are a couple in there. But yeah, as far as regular episodes, this is episode 8, and this is the final episode of our series on the Wachowskis. We've been talking about this since, I think, September. I believe,
yeah,
or like the end of September,
time.
beginning of October, something like that.
Yeah.
So we spent a good chunk of the latter half of 2021 talking about this, and we're going into a new year with the end of this, and then we'll be starting a new series coming up. We'll talk about that at the end of this episode. But for now,
new year, new film.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's a new film every week, but
well, yeah.
Now we're like potentially like Wachowski experts almost.
I would say if anyone is, we are.
Yeah, we've done them all. We've done every single film. So
and
this is
every film, including V for Vendetta, which they didn't even direct, and including Sense8, which is an entire 24 episode television series. So yeah, I'd say that we could write a book on the Wachowskis.
That's an idea.
There you go.
That's an idea. There actually aren't really any out there that really like dive into their films. Well, there's one that I found that I haven't really used it as a reference for this series. I've been reading it as more of like a just because it interested me
For your own edification.
Yeah, but it kind of it's written by a trans author who is sort of viewing their filmography through that viewpoint, and they make some leaps here and there. I mean, we've talked about a lot of that stuff during the series, and some of it definitely tracks, but they also reach sometimes on some, especially on like Speed Racer and stuff like that. It also reads very academic, very like much like a textbook, and it's a little hard to get through sometimes, very dry. But somebody needs to write a good book about just like diving into film by film. Who
better than 3 straight white guys?
Yeah. But nobody's done a book that I've been able to find that takes a film by film look at the creation and analysis of their film. So we've basically done that though in podcast form.
Yeah.
So if we were more entrepreneurial, we would write a book.
Right. Yeah. We're too busy. I
was going to say, who has the time?
Who has the time? We have jobs.
Yeah.
So we talked about Sense8 on a bonus episode that came out recently. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to listen to that. If not, go back and listen to it if you watched the series, because I guess we do probably spoil that series if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But during the production of there is a lot
Spoiler
of
alert.
Spoiler alert, lots of orgies.
Fucks everybody.
Yes, that's mostly what the show's about. Lots of butts, a few boobies, some wieners. So during the production of Sense8, Lilly Wachowski, we talked about this on that episode, but Lilly Wachowski took a sabbatical from filmmaking, leaving all the creative duties on the second season of that show to her sister, Lana. And since that time, the siblings have been working separately on different projects. Lilly has spent a lot of her time working on a Showtime TV series called Work in Progress, which was created by Abby McInerney, who's a writer and comedian. Lilly signed on as an executive producer and has also written and directed several episodes of the series. It recently concluded its second season. I have not seen this series. Have you guys? Are you guys familiar with it at all?
I had honestly never heard of it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't have Showtime, so that's probably part of the reason why.
And if you did, you'd be watching Dexter New Blood.
Yeah, except that, I guess I probably would if I did actually have Showtime, but I'm not going to get Showtime to watch Dexter New Blood just because of the way that Dexter kind of went off the rails there towards the end.
I've been watching it. The new one's pretty fun.
Is it good?
Really?
So, I don't know. I haven't seen the show Work in Progress, but reading a little bit about it, like while working on this episode, kind of made me want to watch it because I don't know. It just sounds fun. One thing there, Julie Sweeney, you know who Julia Sweeney is from Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
She played Pat. It's Pat. Well,
Yes.
she's on the show like as a fictionalized version of herself. Because Abby, who is the main character, is like a lesbian and kind of androgynous in her look, kind of, and she is a self-identifying, this is a quote from the way she describes her character, a fat queer dyke. So that's how she describes herself. And Julia Sweeney plays there's a recurring plot point because Abby has been sort of traumatized by the character of Pat from Saturday Night Live, and Julia Sweeney is attempting to make amends for that, which I think is really funny. Also, Weird Al Yankovic appears as Julia Sweeney's husband, but also as himself.
Oh, that's
show.
funny.
So I don't know what's going on in the show, but I want to watch it.
It sounds interesting.
Anyway, so I might have to get a Showtime, like a trial to watch the show.
I did a deep dive into Lily for a while there. I was just really curious, like what her reasoning was for stepping away. And I found a few interviews with her where she talks about it. I think one was in Entertainment Weekly, or there was a big one in Hollywood Reporter too, I think. But when they asked her why she walked away, she said, "That's a tough one. I got out of my transition and was just completely exhausted because we had made Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending and the first season of Sense8 back to back to back. We were posting one and prepping the other at the exact same time. So you're talking about 100 plus days of shooting for each project. So coming out and just being completely exhausted, my world was like falling apart to some extent, even while I was like, cracking out of my egg. So I needed this time away from this industry. I needed to reconnect with myself as an artist. And I did that by going back to school and painting and stuff." She also talks about a little resentment. She says she had resentment towards the industry because she felt like she had wasted personal time, 3 decades long career. She says, like, sometimes you'll be making a film and you feel like you got out of a time machine and you get in and you get jostled around and you come out a year and a half later and things have just totally changed.
Yeah.
And she also blamed Hollywood a little bit, just in general. She said, "I got in when a film was at its peak before boards and marketers found a way to wrangle movies. Eventually, all those people and institutions ended up in the room with you, and specifically behind the typewriter and behind the lens and behind the Avid. It created a bit of tension for me personally. I got to this breaking point and I just had to walk away."
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And she did take a little bit of a break before beginning work on Work in Progress. I think Work in Progress premiered in like 2019. So she's taken a few years off since. So it's been 4 years since the first season of Sense8, which is the last thing that she worked on. So she's taken a few years off. And in the meantime, Lana continued to collaborate with many of the creatives that helped her bring Sense8 to the screen. But this time, they were returning to the franchise that brought the Wachowskis worldwide acclaim more than 2 decades ago. We're talking, of course, about this week's film, a new release, a first time for Cinema Shock, I believe, a new release. We're talking about The Matrix Resurrections.
Whoa, I remember this.
So deja vu. And yet it's obviously all wrong. Maybe this isn't the story we think it is.
They taught you good. Made you believe their world was all you deserved. But some part of you knew that was a lie. Some part of you remembered what was real.
It's so easy to forget how much noise the Matrix pumps into your head. Something else makes the same kind of noise. War. I saw this in a dream. My dream ended here.
still know kung fu.
I don't remember if he said "whoa" in the movie. I know he
does.
says "I still know kung fu."
Does he?
Yeah, he says "whoa." They're showing him something. It might be when the Morpheus thing, when he shakes his hand, when it's like in the real world, the Morpheus projection thing that's made of the little beads.
Oh yeah.
When he shakes his hand, he says "whoa." It's either whoa or wow, but I'm going to say that it's whoa. I've watched this movie 3 times this week, guys. So
really? Oh wow.
So, yes, yeah. I watched this movie in the theater opening night, and then I have rewatched the first 3 Matrix movies. Watched this again, and then watched this again with Buddy. So I've watched it 3 times. Yes.
That is. I'll be honest. That kind of makes me want to throw up.
So it was fun. Woo. Watched it in the theater and at home, and then with Bunny. So it's different experiences each time,
So anyway, now Justin is going to, what this episode is basically Justin's going to recite the Matrix Resurrection.
The entire plot.
Spoilers about.
Of which, I guess, if you have not seen the Matrix Resurrections, we are going to spoil it. We do this on all of our episodes. We always talk about the movie as if, we're hoping that you watch it along with us and have watched the movie, or at least have seen it. Of course, this being a new release is the reason that I'm actually giving a kind of disclaimer this time around, because a lot of people haven't seen it yet. It's still on HBO as of the time we're recording this, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it, at any point in the future pretty easily. But I just want to throw that out there, that we're going to be talking about the movie pretty in depth, and spoilers will abound. So the movie, the 4th Matrix movie, had a long road to the screen, because for years, neither of the Wachowski sisters had any interest at all in doing another Matrix movie. In fact, back when they were working on the 2nd and 3rd film, they had told their close collaborators that they were ending the franchise there, instead giving their blessing to the idea of gamers, quote, inheriting the storyline with the next Matrix video game, which was a massive multiplayer online RPG called The Matrix Online. They wanted that game and the storyline that the gamers created to serve as the official continuation of the story. But then in the early 2010s, rumors began to swirl that the Wachowskis were workshopping ideas for a 4th film, had possibly even met with Keanu Reeves to discuss the possibility. But all of these turned out to be just rumors. I mean, this happens in Hollywood all the time. We're always hearing about rumors, and until they're substantiated, like it's
lunches being had, meetings being taken.
Right. Maybe Lana and Keanu just had lunch because they're friends, and they might not have been taken. Yeah, right.
That could be, but yeah, you can definitely see the press blowing that out of proportion. I wonder if they were thinking with the video game that like it was just going to take off, like the MMO RPG thing would just, I don't know, like that's the natural next evolution of this thing, which again, they're ahead of the curve. It's like even if like they wanted to get into VR and you could live in the Matrix, like Facebook's trying to do to you right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I would play a Matrix Oculus game, honestly.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Except I would try to do bullet time, then I would just fall in my living room.
I think we're getting to the point where you're eventually going to be able to like strap on a suit or something and live in the metaverse. As Mark Zuckerberg would have you do. But he's basically creating the Matrix. Yeah, he's trying to create the Matrix right now. But I still feel like we're a little ways off from it. So again, I think they're ahead of the game on that. So back to the theater, Wachowskis.
So in 2015, while promoting Jupiter Ascending, Lily Wachowski was quoted as saying that a return to the Matrix was a particularly repelling idea in these times. And these times meaning these current Hollywood, these times when studios preferred to greenlight sequels, reboots, and adaptations over original material. Lana also addressed the rumors about a potential reboot, saying that they hadn't heard anything, but thought that the studio might be looking to replace them and move forward with the franchise with or without them. Over the years, in various interviews, Keanu Reeves and Hugo Weaving, they're often asked about the idea of a new film. They both kind of showed willingness to return, but only if the Wachowskis were involved from a production and creative point. Then in 2017, The Hollywood Reporter broke a story saying that Warner Brothers was in the early stages of developing a relaunch of the series, with Zach Penn in talks to write, and Michael B. Jordan was being sought after to star. Now, at this point in the development, the Wachowskis weren't involved at all, although Warner Brothers they were hoping to get their blessing. And then Zach Penn, when he was asked about it, he denied that a reboot or remake was being considered, and that the ideas for stories set within the universe that had been established by the Wachowskis were being explored. So he was just kind of a shared universe kind of situation. I mean, this is 2017. This is well within the time of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's what everyone wants. That's what Warner Brothers wants. That's what they've been trying to unsuccessfully do with DC. But The Matrix, we've talked about this even back, especially when we talked about, I think, the Animatrix. Like, this story is ripe for ideas for an expanded universe.
Oh yeah.
But this seems to be maybe what Zach Penn was working on.
For those who don't know, Zach Penn, by the way, if you've seen X2 or the Edward Norton Hulk movie, he wrote those screenplays. We talked about him in the Shane Black episode, I think, for a minute, because he originally had written the Last Action Hero, right? He
wrote the Avengers too, the first Joss Whedon one, I think, didn't he?
I think that is correct.
Yeah, he's done a lot of comic book stuff. He did.
You can also look at him as the guy who did X-Men: The Last Stand in that Electro movie.
Yeah.
So whichever way you want to view him.
Most importantly, he wrote Last Action Hero.
Yeah, but that's what I meant with the Shane Black episode. I think we brought him up for a minute because he had written that, and then Shane Black had the rewrite duty thing.
Shane Black did the rewrite, yeah. So anyway, one of the ideas that was being kind of kicked around was rumored to being kicked around, I should say, was a film about a young Morpheus, or maybe a sequel about one of his descendants. This was kind of the internet's thinking when they saw that Michael B. Jordan was possibly being involved, that he might be playing either a young Morpheus or a descendant of Morpheus. In August of 2019, Warner Brothers officially confirmed that a fourth Matrix film was in the works, but that it wasn't the one that Zach Penn was working on. Zach Penn apparently never stopped working on that. He may even still be working on whatever project that was. But this was actually a separate project that was being developed kind of simultaneously, side by side with the Zach Penn project. This one was going to be directed by Lana Wachowski herself.
I actually found a tweet from Zach Penn back in 2019, and I don't know why I dug so much into this, but but he said, people keep asking, so let me clarify. There are now two different Matrix projects at WB. I wrote one set earlier in the timeline of the Matrix universe. Lana Wachowski is directing a sequel that I did not work on, but I cannot wait to see it. Neither of these are reboots. So that's what makes me think that maybe he's still working on that, or it may have been shelved at this point, but who knows? I guess it might depend on how well this movie does, on if they move forward with any other ones. But Lana Wachowski's back on board, and what the question is kind of what changed her mind. I mean, she was very adamant about never returning to the Matrix back when they were doing the other one. She thought that the story was told. Well, back in September of 2021, just a few months ago, Lana spoke on a panel at the Berlin International Literature Festival. And there she explained how for many years, she and Lilly considered the story concluded. Even though she says that every year Warner Brothers would ask us to make another one. Like Warner Brothers, they know the power of the intellectual property, and they wanted another Matrix movie, and they wanted the Wachowskis involved. She said that every year they would drive truckloads of money up to our house and say, you can have this. And we said, no, not interested.
Yeah, they were not. But then she goes on to explain in that same interview, or that same panel she was on, how a series of tragedies in her life led her back to the Matrix. So within the span of a few months, both of her parents got ill, and eventually they both died. During the same period of time, a close friend of hers died. So all within the span of a few months, her dad dies, then her friend dies, and then her mother dies. And remember how supportive her parents had been, like when she came out, her parents, they had a very close relationship with their parents, and she was devastated, and she didn't know how to deal with that kind of grief all at once, And then one night she's unable to fall asleep. She's restless, and, thoughts just start pouring into her head. And the way that she tells the story is that during this sleepless night, this entire story comes to her. The idea for what another Matrix could be. And here's what she goes on to say. Here's a quote from that panel. She says, I couldn't have my mom and dad, yet suddenly I had Neo and Trinity, arguably the two most important characters in my life. It was immediately comforting to have these two characters alive again. And it's super simple. You can look at it and say, okay, these two people die, and okay, bring these two people back to life. And doesn't that feel good? Yeah, it did. It's simple. And this is what art does. And this is what stories do. They comfort us and they're important. So it was with this mindset that she set out to make a new Matrix movie, kind of this idea of these characters who had died in the film. They had died, but because they're part of the story that she can control, she actually has the ability to bring these two characters back to life.
You could also look at the text of the movie and decide that some of the other things she might have been thinking were that line between who is eventually Agent Smith and Keanu Reeves, or they say our beloved parent company, Warner Brothers, has decided they will make a sequel to the trilogy with or without us.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's definitely got plenty to say about that. In the
very meta.
But yeah, as for why Lily didn't return, I mean, Gary touched on it a little bit, but she did say that there was something about the idea of going. This is a quote. There was something about the idea of going backward and being part of something that I had done before that was expressly unappealing. I didn't want to have gone through my transition and had gone through this massive upheaval in my life, the sense of loss from my mom and dad, to want to go back to something that I had done before and sort of walk over old paths that I'd walked in, felt emotionally unfulfilling and really the opposite, like I was going to go back and live in these old shoes in a way. And I didn't want to do that. And I thought that was really interesting when I read that quote after reading that quote from Lana, because I think it's really interesting how different their attitudes are to it. Like Lily felt like if she went back to the Matrix, she would be regressing by going back to that well, like walking in those old shoes on those old paths. Whereas Lana seems to have felt comfort in revisiting the familiar, you know?
Yeah,
I thought that was really interesting how different their takes on that was.
Yeah, at that same Berlin International Literature Festival you mentioned earlier, they asked Lana about this because this is going to be like the first film, I guess, they haven't directed together. And she said that she had asked Lily, I think her quote here is, I asked Lily if she wanted to do this and she wanted to process her grief differently. And she was in art school and she was on a different path. She didn't want to go this way to process. But, you know, the story evolved and I told my wife the story and she said, oh, my God, you have to make it. And I was like, Matrix, can't go back there. But I asked my friends. My friends were really the sort of decision-making process that helped me say, okay, yeah, this is right. Let's do this, because these people are really the reason we went back and did it again.
So in lieu of having her sister as a co-screenwriter, as she had on all of the previous Matrix projects, Lana brought in David Mitchell and Alexander Heumann to co-write the screenplay with her. Now, Mitchell, as you'll recall, we mentioned him in our Sense8 episode as well. He had written the novel that Cloud Atlas was based on, and he and Heumann had been Lana's co-writer on the series finale of Sense8. So she's bringing back these past collaborators. You know, I mentioned in our Sense8 episode how she had almost built a new family of collaborators starting on Cloud Atlas and moving forward. You see a lot of the same people. So in this particular case, on the new Matrix movie, she would have several other collaborators coming back, including cinematographer John Toll, who had shot Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending, and Sense8, editor Joseph Jet Sally, who had edited Ninja Assassin and every episode of Sense8, and several episodes of Work in Progress with Lily. The music was once again composed by Johnny Klimek and Tom Tickler. Hugh Badeup was back as the production designer. Dan Glass is back as the visual effects supervisor. So the band's getting back together.
Yeah.
It's really kind of fun to see that all these people, this creative family, are all coming back together for this project. And none of these people are well, I think Hugh Badeup had worked on The Matrix. He wasn't a supervisor, but I think he was in production design or something along those lines under Owen Patterson back then. But most of these people are ones who started working with the Wachowskis around Cloud Atlas. And of course, Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are also returning in the roles of Neo and Trinity. But they're actually some of only a few cast members from the original trilogy that would return. The only other performers from the original trilogy that appear, except in archive footage, are Jada Pinkett Smith as an elderly version of Niobe and Lambert Wilson as the Merovingian in a pretty fun kind of cameo in the movie.
Daniel Bernhardt is uncredited, but he plays Agent Johnson.
Oh yeah.
And
he played Agent Johnson in the original.
And in the original,
I think he's a stuntman.
Yeah, he's in a lot of action movies, just like his like little small goon roles usually. But yeah, he was also in there. I saw.
Nice. So 2 actors from the original trilogy who are conspicuously missing from the film are Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus and Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. So Weaving was originally he was approached to play Smith in the film, but he had some scheduling conflicts. He had been appearing in a play, and although they tried to work with his schedule, it just wasn't meant to be. They could not work out the scheduling. So Jonathan Groff was cast as a new iteration of Smith.
Love him as Smith.
I love Jonathan Groff anyway. And I think he's having a lot of fun in the role.
Really there's not like you can't find like much about the casting in this, I guess, because there's not much to tell. I mean, like Keanu Reeves, like literally in an interview is just like, why'd you agree to return to this series after a 2-decade hiatus? He's like, we had filmmakers we wanted to say yes to, and we had a script we wanted to commit to.
Yeah, I mean, and Carrie Ann Moss, like that, the original Matrix made her career. Why would she not return? But I think Jonathan Groff is really good.
I love him on Mindhunters.
I love him on Mindhunter.
So good.
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
I love him in Hamilton. Yeah. But in this, he does this thing because he's playing Smith very, very differently, obviously, than Hugo Weaving. But there are moments when you watch this where he goes into like some speech patterns that are very similar. Mm-hmm. The one that stood out to me when I rewatched this was when he's talking to Thomas Anderson in his office, that first scene that he's in, and he's saying how stories never really end. He says they have different, they may have different names, different faces. And the way that he says different faces, he has this like pause in there that is, he's doing Hugo Weaving as Smith for like a moment while talking, while addressing a different face, he has a different face. It's really a great little subtle nod. And when I rewatched it, I thought I caught it, and then I watched it again and I was like, he's 100% doing a Hugo Weaving thing there just for like 3 words.
It's very subtle, but watch what he's doing. It's spot on Hugo Weaving.
It's good. And of course, Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne claims to have not been asked to come back to the film. He told Collider in an interview recently, you'd have to ask Lana Wachowski why, because I don't have an answer for that. But here's one rumor that, or one theory, I guess, that a lot of people on the internet have had about this, is that the answer might lie in the aforementioned Matrix video game, The Matrix Online. So The Matrix Online was this massive multiplayer online role-playing game where players would control a newly awakened red pill who chooses one of several factions that have been formed between the humans and the machines in the wake of the ending of the 3rd film. So players would interact with several characters from the trilogy. You had like the Oracle was a major character, Seraph, and of course Morpheus. And in the plot of the game, which takes place after the events of the Matrix Revolutions, Morpheus returns to the Matrix to ask the Oracle why, despite the truce between humans and machines, the machines had actually not returned Neo's remains to Zion. So Morpheus, along with whatever players choose to join his faction, they start trying to reconstruct Neo's residual self-image, the version of Neo that exists within the Matrix, his digital avatar. That's kind of what they call it. They're trying to resurrect him essentially as a way to kind of resurrect him, or at least to resurrect a version of him. But Morpheus gets frustrated when he can't do it. So with no other options, he begins detonating code bombs across the Matrix, compromising the integrity of the simulation as a way of kind of forcing the machines to comply with his demands. Morpheus essentially becomes we won't call him a terrorist. We'll call him a freedom fighter.
Okay.
like V and V for Vendetta, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. But
there you go.
Yeah. So after setting off one of the code bombs, Morpheus is ambushed by a program created by the machines called the Assassin, and he's killed in the storyline of the game. And of course, this is considered canon by the Wachowskis. And there could be more to the story, but The Matrix Online was canceled in 2009, so we might never know if maybe he faked his death, which was one of the theories that was going around, but the story never went beyond that, so we'll never know. So but Niobe does tell Neo in this movie, she tells Neo that after Revolutions, Morpheus was elected to the high chair of the council, like unanimously elected. And then when there were rumors that there was this new power taking over the machine world, he ignored them. He was certain that what Neo had done could not be undone. That's what Niobe says in the film. So it's hard to say how those timelines might line up. It's possible that we'll learn in interviews in the future with Fishburne and or Wachowski, there might be more to the story that we don't know yet. More light might shine on the reasons why he wasn't involved. It could also be that this is set 60 years after the events of the last film, and that would make Lawrence Fishburne's character like 90 years old.
Yeah.
So there's also that. So
yeah, he could be dead. He could just be dead.
He could just be. He died of old age because Niobe is old as shit in this movie.
Yeah,
it could just be a logistical storytelling thing.
Yeah,
but
that's true. But maybe, you could make those two stories work together. Like he got caught up in all this other bullshit. And
you could absolutely make them work.
The stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So instead of Fishburne as Morpheus, we have franchise newcomer Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as a version of Morpheus. And I love this actor. He's quickly becoming one of those like actors I look for. I first saw him in, what was it, Aquaman, where he played Black Manta?
Yeah.
And then he's in the new Candyman movie, and he's really outstanding in that.
I don't think they call him Black Manta, Justin.
Isn't that the character's name in the comic book?
It is, but it's a little on the nose.
But that is am I wrong? Is that the character's name?
Yeah, it's Black Manta. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's the comic character. I think they only in the movie refer to him as Manta because they're just like, well, clearly he's.
Anyway, he was great in that, and I remember seeing him in Aquaman and thinking like, this guy's got like movie star potential. He's very charismatic. He's in this, I think, more than anything I've seen him in, showcases his charisma. But I did think he was really good in the Candyman reboot, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever that was.
Whatever you want to call that. He's very good. Yeah. Other franchise newcomers include Neil Patrick Harris as the analyst, Priyanka Chopra, who's married to one of the Jonas Brothers, apparently, as Sati, and Jessica Henwick as Bugs. Jessica Henwick, wasn't she in Iron Fist? Isn't she in Iron Fist?
She is, yes.
So, yes.
She was Colleen Wing.
Yeah.
In Iron Fist. She was up for a role in Shang-Chi. And at the same time,
she had to choose between the two.
Yeah. And both Disney and Warner Brothers knew about the other's offer, and they gave her an ultimatum that she could audition. She could audition for one to get it, only if she forfeited the other one.
Wow.
And so neither role was guaranteed. She says it was a real red pill, blue pill moment for her.
And she chose the red pill.
Yeah, she liked it because she thought that Bugs was kind of the audience's eyes in Resurrection.
She is, yeah, she is. I mean, she's the first character you meet in the film.
Yeah, and so she liked the idea that she was kind of the she's the vision for like all these new characters and everything. Like you're kind of seeing it through her. And but I thought she was really, really great. And Groff and everybody's good. I don't know. Given what they did do with Morpheus, I know we said all that stuff, but I guess the argument could still be made. Like if he's just getting remade in the Matrix as like a program, then he could still technically be Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, he could, but but they kind of address that a little bit because they do address the kind of the reskinning of certain characters, even that in the modal at the beginning, you've got Trinity, but it's not really Trinity. Even the agents look different because he is initially written as sort of an amalgamation of Morpheus and Agent Smith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's true. And Groff, just for what it's worth, he was really, he spoke well of Keanu and everything. And he's normally, is obviously like a Broadway trained actor and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think he came out in 2009. So he talked about how big of a deal this was for him to be like in an action film, like in an action role. And, like since, I guess LGBTQ people aren't traditionally seen in that role, so he took it as like a big moment for him to be able to be a part of that.
So also joining the cast of this is about half the cast of Sense8. Really, you've got Toby Onwumere. He plays Sequoia, the operator of the ship whose name I even after watching this movie 3 times, cannot pronounce.
Yeah.
Max Remelt, he plays Shepard. Brian J. Smith, I don't remember his character's name in this, but he's another crew member. He's the one that's like the neologist, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that guy.
Yeah, So he was. That's Will Gorski.
Will Gorski. Yeah.
You've got Irandira Ibarra, who I don't think we really talked about in our Sense8 episode, but remember she played Daniela on Sense8.
Yeah,
she's
the third wheel.
The third wheel that she that ruins their lives.
Yeah.
You've got Michael X. Summers, who played Bug in Sense8. He's got a small role here. Even like you've got Freema Agyeman. She has a very, very small role as like a employee at Deus Machina. You know, she's really in that one montage where they're talking around the table. And then you've also got in that same scene, there is Purab Kohli, the guy who plays Rajan in Sense8. He's in there. But he looks very different. He's got like a ponytail and stuff.
Yeah.
And Mumbi Mena, who played she was the journalist in Cafias' story and Sense8. She's in there. And Max Moff, who plays the guy who I don't like in Sense8, you know, the German guy. He's in this as the construct of the like machine who's helping them grow strawberries.
Oh yeah.
That's him as well.
Nice.
I didn't recognize him at first, but until I looked at the credits. But yeah, there's a lot of people in this movie, a lot of them in very, very small roles. But I like that they're just kind of allowing, like, just asking their friends to come in to film a couple of scenes. Sometimes it seems, which may be why Christina Ricci only has literally one scene in this.
I was about to say, is she a good friend of the Wachowskis?
I mean, she was in.
You want to stop in for a sec?
She's in Speed Racer.
Hey, let's not gloss over. I know the listeners can't see this, but Justin wrote a fantastic joke here in the notes.
What did I write?
Even Freema Agyeman in a very, very small role, though not quite as small as Christina Ricci. And I was like, that is such a brilliant, because not only is the part small, but like Christina Ricci is a tiny person.
She's a tiny person. Yeah.
Christina Ricci is 6'4", so I don't know why you're saying that.
It's mostly head.
Forehead.
She's built like a Funko Pop. That's basically how.
No, I love Christina Ricci, and I was actually really excited to see her in this. Like when I remember,
I feel bad, Christina. I know you're listening, and I'm sorry.
She's a very beautiful woman. Come on, let's not kid ourselves.
No. It's just it's a fun little gag.
But I remember when her casting was announced, getting really excited, like, oh, I'm going to get to see her do some like Matrix, like kung fu shit. And she just plays like. She works for Warner Brothers and she's got neat hair.
I'm in the boardroom.
Yeah, she's just in the boardroom the whole time. But maybe, I don't know, maybe her role got cut short because, you know, maybe it got edited. Maybe a lot of it ended up on the cutting room floor, or maybe I was about to say maybe they have plans for future movies, but they've been pretty adamant about this being the last one. But we've heard that before. Anyway, while we're on the subject of the cast, Todd.
Yes.
Any luck on this one with any Star Trek alumni?
Well, actually, so let's go ahead and get into our one. It's definitely my favorite segment.
It might not be anyone else's, but it's yours.
That's true, and we're going to keep doing it. Who am I trekking with? So here we go. We've got Chris Reed. He's a stunt performer, and he did alongside Stephen Dunleavy, who is credited as Agent Jones in this. He is also an assistant stunt coordinator for the movie. Both of them were on 3 episodes of Star Trek Picard. And Stephen Dunleavy actually was a stunt performer in season 1, episode 4, Absolute Candor, which is directed by Jonathan Frakes. And Mr. John Gaeta, the Gaeta Force, Mr. Bullet Time himself, is credited as the Deus Machina employee number 1, and his connection is
terrible.
Yeah.
He's a terrible actor.
It's really
him and the other 2 guys in that scene, like they're all clearly like they're doing cameos as like a fun little but they're all really bad.
But John Gaeta's connection is he was part of the crew for Star Trek 5, which I think we mentioned. Star Trek 5, The Final Frontier. He was the chief lighting technician for the model unit. So basically he took the little models that get filmed and made them look even more pretty. So
that was the thing that they did.
Yeah, exactly. Back when that was a thing, which I think Justin mentioned in his notes back in when we covered the Matrix initially. So that's everybody on Star Trek.
So not a lot in the actual cast other than like stunt performers, really.
Yeah, just stunt folks. Yeah, for the most part. Which I thought, I was like, okay, some of these people for sure. And I was just like, oh, it's everybody from the Matrix and Sense8. So no.
Well, it's tough to get new faces in Star Trek. So now we've just helped out Paramount. They know where to like mine for actors now.
all the Wachowski movies. Well, John Gaeta is one of a few like kind of fun cameos because James McTeague has a cameo in there. Tiger Chen-Hu has a cameo, and then the most obvious one is Chad Stahelski as Chad, handsome Chad.
He's such a Chad.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was doing stunts on this one. I mean, Chad Stahelski, we know he was Keanu's stunt double and a stunt coordinator on all the other Matrix movies, but has gone on to become a director in his own right.
He probably remembers the original,
mostly of John Wick movies.
Yeah, I was about to say he probably remembers the first Matrix where he got like broken in half and that one stuff.
Yeah, where he broke his knees in the train.
Oh God.
Yeah. So the Matrix Resurrections began filming on February 4th, 2020 under the code name Project Ice Cream. I don't know why. Filming began in San Francisco before moving on to Babelsberg Studio in Germany. Remember, they filmed a lot of stuff there and some shooting in Chicago.
Apparently they wanted to do a lot in Chicago and they just, the budget didn't allow, which stinks too. Cause in San Francisco, I was reading like right around this, I mean, there was Shang-Chi and Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and like they were all filming there, and apparently San Francisco police department had a fee for like $420,000 per movie to film in the city because of the disruption it causes.
Well, it seems like I think Lana lives in San Francisco now or has a home there, and it seems like that's become kind of a second home outside of Chicago.
I was going to say, aren't they Chicago natives?
They are but originally. She, when they started like brainstorming for Sense8, if you remember in that episode when Michael Straczynski came to her house to brainstorm, it was to her house in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
And San Francisco plays very prominently in that series.
Yes,
that's where Nomi lives.
We talked a little bit about in Sense8 too. Like, I mean, she took a lot of different turns. Like, there was no second unit for any of the action sequences.
Yeah, which is crazy. Honestly,
Lana did all of that.
She shoots everything herself,
and they did it digitally, which I think is different than how they did the other Matrix movies. And in one interview with Keanu, I was looking at, he talks about he remembered her being more behind the monitor in the original trilogy, but still kind of hands-on. But he says with Resurrections. She's participating with the movement of the camera, more interested in doing rehearsing, more interested in that than doing rehearsing. This time around, it was less about prep and it was more about readiness to find the unexpected in the moment. He said we actually barely rehearsed anything, if at all.
Well, Jessica Henwick in some interviews I read with her talks about Lana's directing style, where she would control the camera herself sometimes. And sometimes the way that she describes it is that Lana would, you'd be having a dialogue scene between two people and she might turn the camera away from the person talking to the other person. And you kind of have to be on your toes and ready for whatever she's doing and just kind of keep going because she's kind of just going with the flow, which is interesting because the original Matrix movies were so intricately thought out. Like every shot was thought out like a comic book. Everything was storyboarded, every single moment. And now she's being much more spontaneous, it feels like. And so I don't know if that is just her growing as an artist or maybe the structural, like how specific they were on the previous films was more of a Lilly thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. I was curious about that too, because I just thought that was interesting because we went into detail about, all of the storyboards and how intricately plotted everything was before. And so now it just sounds like she's just like, all right, let's go catch whatever we catch.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see how she's evolved. Now, unless you've been in a coma for the last couple of years, that filming date, the start date of February 4th, 2020 should probably make you cringe just a little bit because it wasn't long after that the entire world shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which included shutting down a lot of film productions. So on March 20th, 2020, production on The Matrix Resurrections was halted. Like they had to stop. They didn't know when they were going to get to start back. And when it stopped, Lana Wachowski flirted with the idea of not even finishing the film, saying that, hey, maybe we won't come back and film the rest of it. Maybe the new Matrix will go down as this legendary incomplete film that nobody will ever be able to see. But the cast and crew
that's pretty cool, though.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it would be pretty cool, but like, because everyone would just want to see that movie.
Yes.
Henwick says that was legit. Like she told her she's really not gonna do it. And she's like, no, you have to.
Yeah.
And she said she really
kind of like, we have to finish this. Like, you have to tell this story.
Yeah. Henwick said she didn't even if they didn't know they were coming back, she said she did not treat it like they weren't coming back. She told her that she refused, and she's like,
yeah, Henwick like kept training and everything during the break, and they were in break for a while from March 16th until August 16th. So on August 16th, filming resumed. So they're what is that, exactly 5 months that they're just not doing anything?
Yeah.
That's a long break to take in filming.
Yeah.
So, but on August 16th, they started filming again in Berlin with strict COVID protocols in effect. And then principal photography wrapped on November 11th, 2020. It's my birthday, by the way. If
nice.
Oh.
Happy birthday a year ago, Justin.
So the Matrix Resurrections, it was, as many other films were, delayed due to the COVID pandemic. Initially, it was scheduled for release on May 21st, 2021, which actually would have had it premiere alongside John Wick Chapter 4, which was also originally scheduled to come out that day. So you had competing Keanu's, which I think is really fun. But John Wick 4 got postponed to April of 2022. And the Matrix Resurrections was pushed back to December 22nd, 2021.
I feel like that's some sort of like climax to an ultimate Keanu plot, though. Like,
yeah, right.
He's immortal. Like, it's just like his goal is to like only my face in the box office. Like, it's just all him. They did. I was gonna say they did do some fun stuff again. They brought back, at least they were still stuck on that. They brought back whatisthematrix.com. And
did they really?
There. Yeah. You could go there and like it knew the time on your computer. Did you ever see that? They had like 2,000 or it was almost 3,000 different unique variations of the trailer that would play based on your time that you were watching it, your date and time. It would read that and say it like it would treat it like you were witnessing something, like it was sending you a secret message. And
wow,
yeah, it was cool. Pretty interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they had a whole thing about the medication. It was ontolofloxacin, which is the blue pill that Keanu is taking in the movie, which is it's an exploration of ontology, which is one of the philosophies that the Wachowskis love, the nature of being. So that's like a clever play on that. They also got into the nice little NFT world. In anticipation, Warner Brothers partnered with a brand called Nifty's to create 100,000 unique NFT avatars that will exist in this thing called the Matrix universe. And users will be given the choice to take the blue pill or the red pill on January 5th, 2021. Or 2022, I guess it will be what that is, and we'll be able to compete with other avatar owners to climb the red pill, blue pill leaderboards by completing missions. And it will be a multi-year experience, including an active online community and missions that offer users opportunities to earn more NFTs and upgrade their avatars. You can go to that site right now and look. They're all sold out. They've sold all 100,000. The cheapest one now is like $75, I think, that you can find.
Oh God.
But
that's crazy.
You just look up Matrix NFT.
I love that they're still doing wild stuff like this. They also did this the Matrix Awakens thing. Did you see this thing with Unreal Engine 5?
Yeah.
That they released for PlayStation 5 and Xbox. What's the new one? Xbox Series X. Mm-hmm. So it was it's described as a new Matrix experience, which was developed by Lana Wachowski and Epic Games. It was described as this is from their their press release, but it's described as a wild ride into the reality-bending universe of the Matrix that features performances by Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss. Epic pitches the experience as a glimpse into the future of interactive storytelling and entertainment in the boundary-pushing cinematic and real-time tech demo. I don't know what that means.
That's generally It's nice to see that despite everything, Lana was able to bounce back and get all of this wild shit done for the Matrix again. I guess it would only happen because it's the Matrix and it has the legacy it has. And no, we didn't even mention it, but I guess worth stating, no Joel Silver this time around. So
no Joel Silver, but he hasn't been with them since the third Matrix movie, right? Or since Speed Racer, maybe
right.
Speed Racer.
Yeah,
but Grant Hill is still on as a producer, and he's been with them since Matrix Reloaded on everything. He's been a producer, and James McTeague is actually credited as an executive producer this time around as well.
Nice.
So the Matrix Resurrections, like all of Warner Brothers films in 2021, was simultaneously released on HBO Max. It's actually the final Warner Brothers film to have a simultaneously theatrical and streaming premiere date as part of their the way that they responded to COVID by releasing everything on HBO simultaneously.
Yeah.
And
thanks a lot, Warner Brothers. Now I have to get off my ass again.
That HBO Max premiere might have hurt the film's box office chances. It's still a little bit early to say how it'll perform in the long run. It's only been out, as of this recording, it's been out for, I think, 11 days, something like that. But it appears to be underperforming a little bit. Like as of today, we're recording on January 2nd. Its opening weekend, it made $12 million, which is not great for a movie this size. It has made to date $30 million domestically, 30.9, so almost 31. Worldwide, including domestic and international combined, about 106 million. So it's not like doing awful, but it's not doing great for a movie that's about $190 million reported budget. It's a big budget, so it's it's still got time. It'll do fine. It'll come out even and probably make a little bit of money, but it's by no means like doing blockbuster numbers right now. That underperformance it's likely a combination of it simultaneously premiering on HBO Max combined with this recent surge in COVID cases due to the Omicron variant. I think more people are staying home, or let's be honest, because anyone who is going out of the house to go see a movie, they're going to see fucking Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Everybody's just going to see Spider-Man. So
this was my first time back in the theater.
Matrix.
Since
you did a Matrix Spider-Man double feature on your birthday?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. That's a very meta double feature.
Yeah, very. But you know what? I will say, with it being my first time back in the theater, I recalled why I disliked going to the theater.
Was it a bad audience or what?
Well, because we went to a matinee of Matrix and we walked in like pretty close to start time. The house was we were in my wife's hometown, southern Jackson, Ohio, which they have a Walmart. That's about it. So they have a very tiny theater, and so we walk in, the entire theater's empty, and we're like, oh, this is going to be great. We have this whole place to ourselves. So we walked down front, about 4 rows back. It was a nice, comfortable surrounding. And then maybe 5-10 minutes into the movie, like not the trailers, not the opening credits, like the movie, this whole family came in and sat directly across from us and talked the entire time.
Oh no,
that's through the entire movie. And it was just kind of like, okay, you've clearly gotten comfortable watching films at home and being able to say whatever dumb thought comes into your head and without much thought for who else is in the room with you.
That's unfortunate.
And you've brought that to the theater. So that was that. And
yeah, man,
Spider-Man was packed out. We saw a regular show of Spider-Man, and it was just kind of like, yeah, we're going to bring our babies with us, man, and all that stuff.
The thing is, like, I've been a grumpy like film buff going to the movie theater for years, and I have finally gotten to where there are certain things that I've just learned that is part of the theatrical experience. And if somebody talks in a movie, if they're now having full-on conversations and talking all the time is one thing. Somebody says something here or there, it doesn't really bother me anymore, as long as they're not like right next to me and they're not doing it constantly through the whole movie. But they're also like, I still prefer the theatrical experience because it is generally more distraction free, but also I have the luxury of having a weird work schedule,
Exactly.
which for all of its for all of the cons, which meaning like, hey, it's Saturday night, my friends want to go out, but I'm at work because I work weekends, kind of thing. For all of its cons, there are some major pros in that I get to go to the movies when nobody's there.
Exactly.
I'll go to the movies at like 1:00 on a Wednesday because I happen to have a Wednesday off.
That's definitely a pro, and especially right now. I mean, this could be a whole other episode just talking about theater experience right now. But we've discussed in our Discord about the fact that there's like 2 teenagers working the concession stand, and you have to buy your tickets at the concession stand.
Regal's a shit show right now. Regal, if you're listening, get your shit together.
One thing I didn't add is that I was going to go to the theater for this, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Just, because making the extra step to go out is one thing. And besides the fact that, Omicron or whatever is happening. Last time when I went to see Spider-Man, I went on like a Saturday like matinee, and because there was only these 2 kids working the concession stand, I think nobody's cleaning the theaters.
No, the theaters are filthy.
There's like popcorn boxes like in every chair.
They're having like staffing issues like every other area right now, and I get that, but I mean, I can't speak for all theaters, but the Regals that are in Greenville, South Carolina, where we're based, have not been handling it well because you're having to buy your tickets at the concession stand, which makes the concession lines so slow and so long. Even if you just want a popcorn, and I buy my tickets through the app or at the kiosk because I've got the like unlimited thing anyway. Yeah. But then if I want to get popcorn, I'm having to wait behind people who are buying their tickets and having to choose their seats, which breaks people's brains for some reason when they have to like choose a seat. And it's very frustrating anyway.
Well, see, that was and last thing, and then I'll stop talking about it. But that was one of the nice things about the theater in Jackson was it's a mom and pop owned 4-screen house. It was kind of nice until you realize like, oh, these people haven't gotten out much.
Well, so I hope that the studio takes this all into consideration for the poor filmmakers here, and I'm sorry, Lana, I saw it on HBO Max, and that's how I watched The Matrix. I put it off to the last minute thinking I'd convince myself to go to the theater, and then I was just like, no, screw it, I'm not going.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're all kind of cranky about the current theatrical experience. It sounds like we might need a nap.
It does,
for sure.
But there are certainly also, I think, some people on the internet who have seen this movie since its release, a week and a half ago, that might feel the same way.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that, whether or not they went to the theater or not, they've apparently on HBO Max at a 2 a.m. viewing, they caught this film, and they needed that for sure. This first person writes, "What the hell is this film? The amount of stupid, overwhelmingly cringe writing, dude bro atmosphere and characters and pathos on steroids. I don't even know what that means, really. The first 15 minutes alone makes me want to throw up. Aside from the fact that it's woke garbage, it's worse than that. It's truly gotten the modern Hollywood treatment. Cringeworthy directing and writing, like Terminator, like Predator, The Last Jedi. My God. Mocking agents, telling jokes, not taking anything seriously, and calling Trinity an effing MILF. Bear in mind, this is Matrix. This isn't some stupid Kevin Smith movie or an SNL sketch, a Matrix parody made for cheap laughs. But that's what this fucking feels like. Watching this back to back would be outright insane. It doesn't work. What the hell were you thinking, Lana? 1 out of 10, right there. I don't even want to continue past this point. I'm walking out. I want my money back, and I'm bloody well buying new popcorn because I got sick watching how you bastardized this. Probably the funniest part was during the first 20 minutes when Keanu looks utterly depressed and confused, effectively channeling the audience to perfection. To hell with you, Lana Wachowski, for spitting on such a wondrous and beloved franchise that we've been so excited to return to for years and years. And this is what you came up with. Matrix Resurrections. Yeah, a damn Frankenstein-style resurrection. And to IMDb review moderator, please don't blame me for using that language in this review, but blame the movie. I'm just trying to make a point that the film does a fine job making itself. I'm going to pretend this doesn't exist now.
Wow, that person is not
Person's
happy.
terrible.
Jeez.
That was the first review I stumbled across on
Wow.
IMDb.
Woo-hoo.
Mehdi says, absolute trash. Every piece of dialogue is like a YouTube comedy sketch. The fights are terrible, and the ending scene is probably the worst thing I've ever witnessed in a movie. Strong words.
Yeah.
Pizza Lord says, the red pill was replaced by a sleeping pill. He says 2.5 hours of pointless dialogue, zero compelling conflict, no antagonist, no point, no emotion, no decent action, absolutely no character development. How this movie was made is astounding. Paul Smith says, absolute gash. I want to eat my eyeballs. Wow. If you have some spare sandpaper, you're better off rubbing it on your eyes with a dash of vinegar. But seriously, don't watch this. Forget it was made. Nietzsche gives it a 0.5 star, says a 3-way battle against Alien Resurrection and Halloween Resurrection for the most useless resurrection of all time.
That's pretty funny, but I'll go ahead and go on the record as saying I like Alien Resurrection, and I don't care who knows it.
It says, but it is still a solid entry, and the Neil Patrick Harris is inexplicably the best part of this movie universe. Let's see here.
I've got one here from Letterboxd that I found that was pretty funny. That it just says, I don't really like any of the Matrix sequels, but I admire people who do.
This person, Jessica, says, if I had a gun with 2 bullets and I was in a room with Hitler, Bin Laden, and the Matrix Resurrections, I would shoot Matrix Resurrections twice.
Isn't that just a quote from The Office?
I think so. Anthony says, please don't make any more Matrix. This was a 2-pack of ass.
So it does remain to be seen what the true legacy of the Matrix Resurrections will be. It has, I mean, you heard those reviews that Gary just read. Not everyone's loving this movie. It's been pretty divisive. Although I feel like I've heard more positive takes from critics than I have from like your average everyday viewer, if that makes sense. Like it's like but even with critics, it's split. I think maybe a lot of the people that I read have liked it. It's about 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, and
yeah, it's saying, I just pulled it up. I wanted to see it. 65 on Rotten Tomatoes, 63% audience score.
Yeah, so pretty split both ways, you know.
Yeah.
So before I get into what I think about it, I guess I want an initial reaction from you guys. I'm very curious as to where you stand on this because it is so divisive. I'm curious, even, you know, looking at it as part of the overall Wachowski legacy, you know, and considering everything we've talked about on this series, and I feel like we're pretty in tune to what they try to do as filmmakers. Where do you guys land on the Matrix Resurrections?
You know what killed me is that, like, even on Letterboxd, sorry, I know you're asked a different question, but I was going to say even on Letterboxd, what surprised me is I think on like IMDb, it's let's see, I've got it right here on IMDb. It's a 5.7 out of 10, which usually there it's like just randos. It's like people who seem incompetent sometimes review there, but Letterboxd is usually pretty solid. And even amongst my friends and everything, I'm seeing like mixed reactions to it. And it's got like a 3.1.
It's got a 3.1, but when I look at like the people that I follow on Letterboxd, like I'm seeing a lot of like 4 stars, 4.5 stars, at least 3.5 stars. There are a couple of exceptions.
I'm seeing a lot of 3s.
The majority of the people that I follow on Letterboxd are 3.5 to 4 stars or higher. Maybe it's just the type of people that I gravitate towards on there, but they're overwhelmingly positive from the people that I'm like friends with on there. So it's really interesting. But yeah, 3.1. So, you know, which still is right smack dab in the middle, you know, like that. It's a very divisive film, but it wouldn't be a Matrix sequel if it wasn't a divisive film. You know, that's just kind of, that's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
So where do you guys land on it?
Well, I actually, you know, we talked a little bit about in the Sense8 thing where like I had heard from a couple of people that had said, like, don't expect anything, you know, like blah, blah, blah. And I mentioned in the Sense8, I was like, well, I've been watching the Wachowskis. I feel like I got a handle on what to expect here. And I found it to be more entertaining than I even expected it to be, honestly. Like I liked it. I thought Lana had a pretty good balance on the action and the philosophy in this one, and the best I've seen her do, honestly,
as far as like not bringing the story to a standstill to
exactly. I thought this flowed really, really well. Like, for it being the longest Matrix film, it did not feel like the longest Matrix
Is
film.
it really the longest one?
I think it's the longest one.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
It does not feel
about
like
2.5 hours. Yeah, but I guess I assumed that the other two were close.
I'll
to
look
that,
when Todd gives his thoughts, but I'm pretty positive I saw it was like the longest one.
Interesting, because I would not have guessed that, because it's very well paced, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And so, like, initial, like, first thoughts were that it's better than either of the other sequels to me. And so I don't want to be the guy that says it's better than the first one, but I don't know. I think it's pretty solid, because the first one's fucking green tinge upsets me most of the time, and they kind of kill that in this one. So
yeah, they definitely kill that in this one.
Yeah. And so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Where do you land, Todd?
I'm going to expand on something Gary said. He commented on it being very well balanced, and I absolutely agree. I think where I find the balance, though, is there's a balance between nostalgia, meta commentary, and new areas explored in terms of the philosophy and inner psychology of these characters. And I think that was so well done, just because those scales could have tipped in one of those directions very easily. If you go super heavy on the psychological aspect, you risk it being boring. If you go super meta, now you've turned it into a comedy. If it's super nostalgic, it's just kind of like, why bother? But I think they kind of found like a real nice sweet spot right there in the middle, and all of that made for a very entertaining, fresh take on a franchise that we at this point know very, very well.
I'm honestly a little confused by, like, some reviews that I've seen, and even some of my friends' reviews. I want to ask them about this, because when people said don't expect much, or don't, it's not what you think, or I saw that in a few places while I was watching it, and I thought immediately it was going to be back to something I've said a few times, is that, like, people just don't get the Wachowskis. Like, they're not as, I think I said in the Sense8 episode that bullet time, that's what people think of with the Matrix, and that's what they're going to be expecting. And I'm like, so, now I know I'm not going into the Matrix Resurrections expecting, like, full on action packed blockbuster. But then I watched it and I'm like, it's fun. Like, it's got a lot of fun in it.
It's got some great action in it.
I thought people were, I guess where I was going is, I thought people were seeing, too much boring stuff, or, that grind to a halt thing, like you mentioned. And I don't think that happens at this one. So I kind of finished it and was just like, well, what were people missing? Like, there's plenty of action.
I mean, I think I have an idea there. Like, for my money, I love the movie. I mean, I told you guys I watched it 3 times this week. I'm not going to watch the movie 3 times if I didn't enjoy it the first time, but I did want to experience it again. I went to see it. My wife had not seen 2 and 3 yet, so I went to see this one without her on opening night. I went with a couple other friends, and then I rewatched the first one with her, and then watched 2 and 3 with her, and then watched 4 immediately. Like, this is all within 4 days. Like, we watched 1 a day. So she finally watched them. Then we watched this together. But in between, like, I actually watched this one on my own and then watched it again the next day with her.
Oh, wow.
Just because I was ready to see it again. I just wanted to see it again. I just wanted to dig into it a little bit more, because after that initial viewing, like, I'm like, I enjoy this. There's a lot to unpack here, so I knew that this was going to be a movie that would grow upon future viewings. And I think that Lana Wachowski continues to defy expectations here. Just as she and her sister had done on the second and third films in the series, it pissed off fans of the first movie then. It's pissing them off now, because she's not giving them what they expect from a Matrix movie. She's not only playing around with expectations of what people expect from a Matrix movie, which is like bullet time, and these action scenes that are shot to look like they're from a manga or something, these like very expertly composed scenes. The action in this it's not chaotic at all. It's actually very well choreographed in this, but it's shot in a less fussy way than in the original movies, because everything's not just like, it's not made to look like a comic book or a storyboard. It's shot much more natural in its movements. So there are some good action sequences, but you don't have like Morpheus doing some cool jump up in the air slow mode while he's doing the crane. Instead, he's like running along the walls of a bathroom stall. Right. Which that might be what the people that were talking to you, Gary, were talking about. Like, it doesn't look like a Matrix movie, not in its action, not in its cinematography. But also she's playing around with the expectations of what's expected, not just of a Matrix sequel, but of a legacy sequel, which is what is kind of the Hollywood buzz term of things like Ghostbusters Afterlife, like, Halloween from 2018, like these sequels that are technically connected to the original movie, but are decades later. That these legacy sequels is kind of it's
a decent term. I like the term.
Yeah. But she's playing around with what's expected of a legacy sequel, while also playing with Hollywood's notions of these legacy sequels and reboots and reimagining. She's playing around with what Hollywood's doing with all of these intellectual properties now. I mean, in the first half of this film, especially, Thomas Anderson is very clearly an avatar for Lana Wachowski herself, like being forced into making this new sequel to The Matrix that they had no interest in initially. Yeah. Either they make a fourth Matrix game, or in this case, movie, or Warner Brothers will simply make it with somebody else. Like they say that in the movie. It could not be more on the nose, and what they're trying to do. If you've followed the production history that we talked about it on this episode, then you know that before Lana got involved, Warner Brothers was indeed planning on moving forward on the franchise with or without her. So Thomas Anderson, Neo, like Wachowski, has a choice. You can see this deeply personal story that you've worked on for that's defined your life, handed to somebody else, or figure out a way to get back into it. It's a really cool way to just frame the plot of a movie, is to make it about making the movie without making a movie about filmmaking.
To be honest,
that's wild.
even if he had not gone back into the Matrix, that's still an engaging plot to watch.
Right.
Like watching this guy, watching him, he tried to commit suicide at one point.
There were all these watching it where I was like,
I'm all in on that plot. And then you add this other thing, like, oh man.
I was almost expecting them to actually reveal that the entire Matrix trilogy was actually just this guy having a nervous breakdown. Which really would have pissed people off.
Yeah, it would have. Yeah, for sure.
And another, I think, of the way that Wachowski is working outside of expectations is in the recasting of Morpheus. We've discussed before, the possible reasons why Fishburne didn't return. I think, I said it before, I think a big part of it is because, hey, this is 60 years later, he's dead. but then, Gary, you did mention that, hey, they could just make a digital avatar of him that looks like Lawrence Fishburne, right? But I think that my theory is that Wachowski recast the role not because she didn't want Fishburne to return, but because she was kind of poking fun at the way that reboots and sequels always try to give us the familiar faces, familiar scenes, familiar dialogue, like repeating of lines. I can't help but think of Willem Dafoe saying, "I'm something of a scientist myself" in the new Spider-Man movie. They're doing that not because he needs to say it in that scene. They're doing it because audience will go, "Hey, I recognize that from like that other movie," and every fucking meme. Like they're doing it as a wink. And instead of,
for what it's worth, it got huge applause. And
it gets a great. It does. It gets a great reaction, but Lana, what she's doing is instead of giving us the Morpheus that we remember, she's giving us a Morpheus that is very different. He's not this like stoic sage with his deep booming voice and everything's very serious. Instead, we get this Yahya Abdul-Mateen is snarky. Yeah. He jokes. He literally like starts to recreate the red pill, blue pill scene when they're on that stage in the theater where it's being projected. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he literally says blah blah blah, like while he's explaining it, like blah blah blahing his way through one of the most iconic scenes of the original movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. I think it's fun. It's a fun way to turn expectations on their head of who you think this character should be. It's also possibly some meta commentary on how that scene has, over the years, we talked about this a little bit in our Matrix episode, but the idea of the red pill, don't go on Reddit, the subreddit called Red Pill, but the way that has been grasped onto by various political groups, and it's all become noise. The original meaning of that scene has all become noise. It's all just become blah, blah, blah. And I think that's her kind of just chucking that all out the window, basically. And which I like that she's got the nerve to do that. I think that's really fun. Because she had to know that she was going to piss people off.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a sense there. She approaches this, I feel like, very much with a sense of like, hold my beer, watch this.
Yeah. Well, because she had also done this on Reloaded and Revolutions. You remember, like she like went completely against audience expectations on those. Yeah, they've got the big fight scenes and things like that, but the way that she, ends it in this big speech from the architect, like that's essentially the finale of the second movie, and that speech turns what we think we know about Neo as the one on its head. She's kind of toying with the audience, I think, here, that expected more of the same from Reloaded and Revolutions, because you've got Jude, the Thomas Anderson's co-worker there at the video game company. He's kind of the kind of fan, him, and then there's another guy whose name I don't recall, but I think he's like Scottish or something, or Irish, who's one of the co-workers there. They're kind of the kind of fans who rejected any of the deeper meaning in those films. They say, like, I think that the Scottish guy says something like, I don't want anything that's just requires a syllabus and a highlighter. He just wants the guns and the action. And Jude boils it down to one thing: bullet time. That's all he wants. And he thinks that's all the audiences want. But Wachowski, instead of just giving us bullet time again, because there's not a single bullet time scene in this movie,
right?
She gives us just something very different, not only from the first Matrix, but very different from anything that the franchise has seen before.
Yeah, it didn't hit me until you were talking about it here that the action even is not the same kind of action.
No, it's very different. I mean,
yeah,
Neo still knows Kung Fu. He says so, but Neo never picks up a gun in this movie. Not once.
Oh, yeah.
Neo never.
God, yeah, I never thought about that.
Neo never holds a gun the entire movie. He does Kung Fu. He does hand to hand, but the majority of his hand to hand combat is defensive. Until he has to go on the offensive, a lot of it is him blocking. Even his little force field power starts as like him blocking, not him using it as an offensive move. Because he even says in the movie, he's like, I'm done fighting. He says that to Morpheus. And that's another scene, I think, that defies expectations, because it's in a very similar looking room to the fight with Morpheus in the first film. But instead of this being this badass, like him learning to fight thing, it's Neo getting his ass kicked the entire time until the very end. It's just him getting the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like the idea of, you've seen the Wachowskis like evolve since the beginning. When Matrix comes out, it's more of you got Rage Against the Machine performing, and it's like this fuck corporatism and capitalism and all this other stuff, like it's got kind of this rebellious attitude. And then by the time they've reached here, from what we've seen with like through Speed Racer and Cloud Atlas and even Sense8 to like now it's got more of a Lana Wachowski wanted a happy ending.
Well, it's more like they're still revolutionary. I think their themes are still revolutionary. I think that their idea of revolution has evolved. I think instead of trying to destroy the machine, now they're trying to remake it or coexist with it. The humans in this film, the humans of the future of Io, which is the human city, they're not trying to defeat the machines anymore. They're learning to coexist with them. I think Bugs even says at one point that what's changed is the definition of our side. So it's not about like destroying the other side. It's about learning to get along with it.
Over on my podcast, the Computer Resume podcast, available now wherever you get your podcast, we talk a lot about the journey without and the journey within. I feel like the Matrix, the original trilogy, was sort of Neo's journey to make sense of the world that he's in, the journey without. And I feel like, especially with Neil Patrick Harris's amazing performance as the analyst, it's more about the journey within, of reconciling, okay, so I know the world that I'm in. This is the world that I'm in. Am I reconciling that in my own mind? And, if it isn't, then the world outside begins to crumble. The thoughts and belief structures and all that stuff starts to crumble unless it makes sense in my own mind, which that's what I take away from it.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty you can dig into thematically on this. The analyst's big speech at the end about feelings versus facts. I mean, dude, you could write a thesis on that shit based on just the current media landscape. That feelings are so much more easy to manipulate than facts. Like how much could you dig into that? There's a lot to be said about this, and I think that this movie in the future, I really think that there's going to be just as much like written about this potentially as the first Matrix. I think once people like start digging into it, there's a lot there. But underneath all of this talk of revolution and rebuilding society and all of these other themes that you could dig into, the central theme of the film is it's a love story. Specifically Neo and Trinity's love story. This series has always toyed with the idea of being a romance, and this time it is front and center. It is the plot of the movie. The major plot of the movie is Neo and Trinity. The major like moment in this movie, the big finale, is them reconnecting. It's not a big fight. It's not a big fight between Neo and the analyst, or Neo and Smith, or any particular machine. In fact, the finale of the film is really a chase. It's Neo and Trinity just trying to run away, like they're trying to escape from this zombie horde, which is really amazing. By the way, that scene, the bodies flying out of the window.
Oh my god,
man, that puts fucking Bad Boys 2 to shame.
It still makes me wonder, like, are these real people? Like,
no, they're bots. They call them bots.
Okay,
they're bots. They talk about it. The analyst talks about it when he's in Trinity's garage where she's building the motorcycles. He says that they've saturated the population with bots instead of just having to have like agents hack into people. They've saturated the population with bots that they can then control by doing the like swarm mode, but it's a way to keep an eye on people, essentially. So a lot of humans essentially have a handler, like the guy who works like Trinity's coworker, so these are just bots that have been activated and turned into bombs essentially and start being flung out of buildings, which is just an insane sequence, I think. But that whole finale is it's not a confrontation, it's an escape. Which is very, very different from anything we've seen in the previous movies, which all really ended in a big hand-to-hand fight scene.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you mentioned too, like the revolution part of it, and I had not thought of it really that much before, but it is still like the revolution is there. There's just, like you said, there's different. The first one was very clearly trying to be like them versus the machines, but as the sequels came along, you realize the machines weren't just all on the same side either. The machines were all independent, and you see now that they'll have wars against each other for scarcity and when they need supplies or whatever. And then Neo even has the moment of like where he's like feels like nothing I did mattered, but then Bugs is like showing like, well, no, it's not that nothing mattered. He's expecting like long-term change to have just happened overnight because he did what he did, but she's showing like, they grow strawberries and they have friends that are robots, and they have like all of this stuff has changed. It's all different. And And even the idea that he's like the ultimate savior, he's the one. Well, he's the one when he's with Trinity.
He's the one when he's with Trinity. Yeah, I mean that kind of gets into that sincerity and romanticism that we've noticed as a trend in the Wachowskis films, right? Because in this movie, Neo realizes that his powers are dependent on Trinity. They're limited when she's not around. It's the power of their love, of them being together, that makes him who he is, which is a very like we've talked about, a very sincere notion. I mean, some people are going to find it cheesy, but we've over the course of the series learned that that's just who they are. They have this very
let's be honest,
romanticized.
We're all three married.
No,
and we're all
not to each other.
Not to each other. Although, but yeah, I feel like I'm my best self when I'm with my wife.
That's very sweet, Todd.
Well, thank you. But I mean, but sincerely, like, yeah, I feel like I'm a better person with that. And I'm sure you guys probably feel something similar.
I might be in a box somewhere, happy.
I'm my best self when I'm with you, Todd.
Oh, that's sweet. You guys could fly when you hold each other.
Yeah, we can.
But no, you're right. I mean, that's a really kind of beautiful concept that they're putting in the middle of what's a big blockbuster sci-fi action movie that's defying every other expectation. So why not do this and make Trinity the one who saves Neo at the end?
Yeah.
Which is
it almost makes
a fun turn.
Yeah, it almost makes the one thing too less of a it's like he's some kind of destined, like it's more like a mindset, like where you're at in your brain instead of he's just got some kind of birthright to be the one.
Right.
It's a different idea.
Yeah, and then in the end, they both have these powers at the end. They fly. I love the final confrontation with the analyst where they just come into his building and he's trying to negotiate and they're like, nah, dude, like we're past that. We're past negotiating. We're here to remake the world. So they're no longer trying to defeat the machines. They're trying to they're trying to make the world a better place, despite the fact that the machines are still there, and I think that's a pretty beautiful sentiment. It's very Lana Wachowski. that eventually, like, we just got to make things better. Like that's what Cloud Atlas is all about. And watching these movies in such a quick succession, not just the Matrix movies, but all of the Wachowski movies, really like hammers that home, like just how sentimental they really are. Yeah, which I don't think they get enough credit for.
Well, I think they're thoughtful, like just in general, and that's one of the things that I've grown to love about them is even like and empathetic and non-judgmental in some of their stuff. Like that was even in because it's easy to be like revolutionary and like wipe out every other concept or think that it's not valid, but they're showing that like even with this, for example, the easy one would be the machines, like it's easy to just say these are the other and they're the bad guys. Right. And that's not the case. The machines all have their own individual motives and their own ideas and beliefs, and like even though they're supposed to be this evolved species almost, they're still like at the end of the day when resources are dwindled down, they're fighting each other and they've got their own shit to work through. And so it's they've been good about that, even with like it's easy to like wipe out religion or Christianity or something else. They like include it in all of this stuff, like still got your Bible verses like on the ship. In this one, they still like these are all just different philosophies and different ways of reading the world, basically. And so it's just kind of interesting. They're very thoughtful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I've really enjoyed like going through their entire filmography this way. It's really given me an appreciation for them. I was already a fan because the original Matrix was a big movie for me as I was like really becoming a big film buff. Like that was an important one for me. So I've always been
wore trench coats all the time.
I never wore a trench coat, never got into trench coats, but I did wear and do wear a lot of black still. But I don't know. This has really made me appreciate them even more, I think.
It still had the Rage Against the Machine song at the end.
Well, yeah, but it's by Brass Against, which is fun because you've got a gender bent version of the song playing at the end, which I think is really fun. Sophia Urista, I think is her name, the lead singer of Brass Against.
She pissed on the guy's face.
Yeah,
on stage.
She'll always be known as the girl who pissed on her fan's face on stage.
I don't know that I knew that. Holy crap.
Yeah, this happened back in November, probably like just recently. Yeah, they were playing at a festival, and she called a fan up on stage and had her lay down underneath him, and she just peed on his head.
There's video online. You can find it.
Yeah, you can find it. Yeah, but they're pretty awesome. And I mean, she's a very attractive lady. So if you're going to get peed on by somebody, I mean, there are worse people to pee on you.
Sure.
That's true.
If you must get peed on. They're actually a really fun band, though. But I really thought that was a fun little nod at the end of this movie. So before we wrap it up, though, guys, it is time for one of my favorite segments on here. We do always towards the end of these episodes, and that is our further viewing segment. I've got mine ready to go. I know exactly what I would show as a double feature with this, but I want to hear what you guys say first.
Ooh,
No.
Further.
Did you just turn it down? You're like,
well,
no. I got nothing.
No.
I think this is pretty unique, and of course, outside of the original trilogy. I think I would probably go with something a little bit more like Expendables. Just bringing those old familiar faces back, putting them in a new context, and seeing what fun you have with it. And don't get me wrong, like we said, there's plenty of deep philosophical things to unpackage here, but at the end of the day, you get, especially right now while it's still in theaters, you get yourself some popcorn and your friends, and you go and you sit, you watch, you have a good time. So I think that was the whole vibe for Expendables. It's just like, hey, you know what, one more go around. All right, let's get everybody together and just make this thing and have some fun with it. And I think this would pair nicely.
Yeah,
Gary, what you got?
I think you go with, obviously there's the Wachowski movies, like Cloud Atlas mirrors this, or has a similar theme to it. I guess I would go back to Blade Runner still, like either one of the Blade Runner movies.
Well,
really.
The Blade Runner 2049 came to my mind just because it's another one of those legacy sequels. If you wanted to watch another legacy sequel, I think that would be a pretty solid choice.
Yeah, that would be my go-to.
So my Blade Runner 2049 is one that I considered, but ultimately I decided if I were going to do a double feature with this, I would go Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Oh, good call.
Well, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because this is Lana Wachowski's New Nightmare. Like this is her acknowledging the franchise and just going very meta in a very different direction. And I just think that would be a fun. They're both very knowing,
Yeah, absolutely.
Very winking at the audience, but both done in a way that doesn't feel like feels like it's supposed to be that way. It doesn't feel forced,
Yeah.
Which is very easy to do when you're referencing your own work. But so Wes Craven's New Nightmare would be my double feature on this one.
Nice.
As much as you love somebody, don't jump off a building with them. Don't do it.
Don't do it. They cannot fly. Most likely.
It'll ruin your weekend.
Yeah, you'll die. Probably. It depends on what floor you're on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
either way,
you'll
you're
ruin your weekend. You probably won't care, but
you'll ruin somebody's weekend.
Somebody's gonna have to deal with your guts. But the
EMS arrives and like,
get out the shovel.
Damn it!
Take us to a movie tonight.
God.
Anyway, that's
2 days.
I was
saw 2
like
days
20
from retirement.
times. They had to. There was like a legit jump with the wiring and everything attached to them. They did it like 20 times over like a 2-day period. They said just a crazy moment.
There's some great stuff. Well, that's it, guys. We've reached the end of our series on the Wachowskis. This was fun. This was a fun series. I think we had a lot of fun. I think we all learned to appreciate them more than we had before. Some of us, like me, who I was already a fan, became a bigger fan and began to notice like aspects of their filmmaking style that I had not seen before. And then some people like the Matrix, or like the Matrix, like Gary over here, who was, I'd say a mild fan at best. I know he thought the original Matrix was okay and actively disliked Speed Racer the first time we talked about it. So
sure, yeah.
But he has definitely come around, and
I've grown a respect for the Wachowskis. Like
Yeah.
I just, I mean, I would not say they're like my favorite filmmakers at all, but they're.
But you'd look forward to a new film.
Yeah, but I would look forward to a new film, and I know what to expect out of them, and I appreciate them a lot. I'm glad they exist. And have done what they've done.
I think they bring some really great stuff to filmmaking. And
what do you think they were trying to say with the face masks with the code on it?
What?
COVID's not real.
When was there a face mask with code on it?
On the train. One of the kids, when they're fighting on the chain.
Oh, did it have code on it? I didn't even notice.
Yeah, the face mask.
There is a lot of code throughout the movie, though.
Yeah, it's like running the Matrix code on the face mask.
There's a lot of like hidden Matrix code throughout the movie. I think that's going to be fun to kind of pick out that as you watch. I watched it. I noticed a couple times on this last rewatch that I had not noticed before, which is pretty neat. Well, I mean, and I definitely will be looking forward to another movie from the Wachowskis, whether they do it solo or separately. And I think that what we'll probably do, since we've covered their whole series, if, in a couple years, if they've still, if one of them comes out with a new movie or something, maybe we'll add it as like an addendum to this.
Yeah, that's
series,
a good idea.
I think that'll be
They're
fun.
not done.
So,
they're going to make.
They're definitely not done. They got a lot
you
more.
think
to
the
say.
Matrix is done?
Do I think the Matrix is done? The producers are saying that it is 100% done now. But again, we've heard that before, so who knows? This movie isn't making the kind of money right now to where Warner Brothers is going to be driving up a dump truck full of cash to Lana Wachowski's house, begging her to make a fifth Matrix movie. That doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. Personally, I would love to see the Matrix expanded into a long-form TV series, not with these characters. I think these characters belong in the movies where they are, but I would love for HBO Max to do like a series set within the Matrix, exploring other parts of the universe.
Yeah, I was thinking,
and bring Lana on as like a producer or whatever. She doesn't have to direct it, but have her involved creatively somehow, and just keep telling stories within this. I would be happy with that.
There's no reason the Matrix can't work like the MCU in a sense.
Right.
Like, I mean, it just it feels like there's a whole. Especially now
there's a lot of potential.
Happened, yeah, I mean, you could even if you got to skip past it, like Neo and Trinity fly off together and nobody knows where the hell they are, and they're
referenced every now and then because they're essentially gods within the Matrix now.
Exactly. So then you just go on and you've got a whole now that.
But you could also do stories that are set earlier in the timeline. Like a Morpheus origin story if you wanted to stick with characters from that, or just stuff set within the second. I want to see more of the second Renaissance. I want to see more stories set within that timeline from the Animatrix, because that's fascinating.
There's a shit ton of crews. You could follow one crew as they are continuously recruiting people to Zion.
It could be like Star Trek. You just a different
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I just can't see how this is it. And if anything, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see what HBO Max finds out from the streaming, and then what that means with Warner Brothers and everything. But maybe they just are like, we don't have to give Lana Wachowski truckloads of cash, but we can make stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they own it. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for this series. Let's talk about what we're doing on our next episode. So
yes.
We're doing something a little bit different starting with our next episode. We're still doing a long form series like we're doing on the Wachowskis. Our next one is going to be on David Cronenberg. We're not doing his entire filmography because we would spend the entirety of 2021 talking about David Cronenberg if we did that. We're going to split his filmography up into multiple series, kind of like we did with Tobe Hooper. But we're not doing that quite yet. Next week, we're going to start a new kind of featured episode. It's a new kind of thing that we're going to do. Because when we talk about movies that we want to discuss here on the podcast, a lot of times I'll come across movies and I'm like, man, that'd be really fun to talk about on the podcast. Wonder what kind of series I could fit that in. Like, who's this filmmaker, or does it fit thematically into another series like the Kill Bill series we did? And some movies I just can't pigeonhole into some sort of series. Or the filmmaker might have only made one decent movie, or might have only made one movie that I feel like is worthy of a 2-hour discussion. There are many reasons why a movie might not work as part of something larger, but they're still worth talking about, So,
and just as a side, listeners, you can also make recommendations.
Yeah,
we'll hear recommendations.
Oh, absolutely, especially for this series or this kind of feature that we're going to do, because a lot of these movies we've had things suggested to us before, but we're like, that doesn't fit into a series or whatever. We can't figure that how to put that in.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is
wanted us to cover Debbie Does Dallas or whatever. You just throw it at us. We'll add it to the pot.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is I've got a list of movies that we're going to be and this will be an ever growing list of movies that I've got just saved on my letterbox. It's a private one right now, but I think over time, once we get it built up, we'll probably make it public and you can look at it and see what the list of our movies is. They're all numbered, although they are
10 days, 10 minutes more like it, but
they are kind of randomly. They're not in any kind of order on my list. So like when we choose them, it'll be totally random. And what we're doing is we're just going to spin a wheel and we're going to see what movie gets chosen for us, what fate chooses for us.
Nice.
It's like in WCW when they did the spin the wheel, make a deal, and Sting had to spin and he had to be in a coal miner's glove match against Jake the Snake Roberts. What is
it going to be exactly like that?
I don't know. Yeah.
So if you guys are ready, as of right now, my list of films is 58 movies long, which is a lot because like if that's if we're only doing this every now and then between series that run for months at a time, then we're not going to get to a lot of these anytime soon. So let's spin the wheel. Todd,
yes,
do the honors. Spin the wheel
and
hopefully
big money, no whammies. Big money, no whammies.
I'm hoping for Julia Roberts series.
All right. Well, what if it was just my best friend's wedding? What if that's what just happened? What if that's what was chosen? No, the fate has chosen. It's number 9 on my list of movies. And it is from, what year is this? 2000, from the year 2000. Ooh. It's a Japanese film. So we're talking about a foreign film. This is Battle Royale, directed by Kenji Fukusaku. So I could not think of a better movie for us to start on for this.
Nice.
That fits. That works. So that's
very
fun.
Cool.
I'm very excited for that. So yeah, there we go. Battle Royale should be pretty easy to find. You can probably rent it. It's on Tubi and stuff too. So you'll find a way to watch it. It's actually streaming in like a shit ton of places. So it's very easy to find.
Yeah. I was just going to look it up, but yeah, it's definitely, everywhere. It looks like it's on the Roku channel with ads if you wanted to go that way, and Vudu with ads.
Yeah. So it's very easy to find. So that's it. That's what we're going to talk about next week. We'll talk about Battle Royale as one of our, we'll call these a Cinema Shock one-off episodes. And then the episode after that, we're going to get into the career of David Cronenberg. So get ready for that.
Sweet.
So,
it'll lead perfectly into that.
So. It kind of does, honestly. So that's pretty great. So let's talk about that next week. Where can our listeners find you, distinguished gentlemen on the internet?
I am at This Is Gary Horn on all the social medias. You can also see some of the stuff I work on with the NWA. They're at NWA on all the things, not the rap group.
The National Wrestling Alliance.
National Wrestling Alliance. And as of this recording, they'll be back on YouTube, on all over the YouTube with their show NWA Power and a new show called NWA USA.
Is it exclusive to YouTube or is it still on Fight TV?
It'll still first Power. NWA USA will be exclusive to YouTube. Power will still first air on Fight TV with the monthly subscription NWA All Access, but a few days later, you'll be able to watch it on YouTube as well.
Nice. Very cool.
Sweet. And if you like Star Trek and want to hear me wax philosophical or comical about that, you can join me in a rotating panel of my family, friends, and occasional Star Trek cast members through the entire franchise in chronological order. So that is over the Computer Resume podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. And you can reach the show at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now Patreon. And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials.
I am at Justin_Bishop. That's on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, where I just did my year in review. I'm still working on my top 10 movies of the year. So I've still got a handful of movies to watch before I get a full top 10, but that'll be on my letterbox if you're interested in that at all. I've also got an ongoing list of all the movies we've talked about on Cinema Shock. And as I mentioned, we'll have this list of potential Cinema Shock one-offs that'll be added. I'll be taking Battle Royale off of that list since it has now been chosen. And I'm looking at the cast and crew of Battle Royale, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize for how badly I'm going to pronounce every one of these names on that episode. So let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. I will do my best.
Nice.
And I am sorry. You can find Cinema Shock at cinema_shock on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on Facebook or at cinemashock.net. At cinemashock.net, you can find a list of all of our episodes, all of our series that we do. I'll eventually probably put a page where you can find all of the one-off episodes kind of grouped together. Maybe you can find all that. You can find links to our Discord on there, links to buy our merch over at Threadless, and all that, and rate and review and all that. Tell your friends if your friends are fans of The Matrix. Maybe they've seen the new Matrix movie, maybe they haven't. Send them this series. Let them dive into the filmography of the Wachowskis like we have. It's been really fun. And thank you for joining us. Until next week.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
I know you said the story was over for you, but that's the thing about stories. They never really end, do they? We're still telling the same stories we've always told, just with different names, faces, and I have to say, Johnny has the keys.
I like that you kind of did the Hugo Weaving thing in there. I weaved in.
I weaved it in.
Well, we're going to wrap.